Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another prediction video. Today is going to be my UFC 292 predictions, Sean O'Malley versus Aljamain Sterling. This fight's going down in Boston, and although there's been a lot of shifting around on the card, I'm still excited for it nonetheless. There's a lot of awesome fights and it's going to be a great night. So let's get into them. So with all the moving around on this card, there's been a lot of things that have changed than when this card was first announced. And currently, there's only 4 fights on the main card. However, that will probably change. I see the featured prelim bout, Chris Weidman versus Brad Tavares, getting moved up. So I'm going to look at it like that. And I'm only going to talk about the main card for this video. So without further ado, let's get into the first matchup, which is going to be Chris Weidman versus Brad Tavares. So I think this could be a pretty fun matchup. Chris Weidman, of course, is coming off that brutal injury that he suffered, where his leg completely broke, and it was just honestly disgusting to look at. One of the most gruesome things I've ever seen happen inside an octagon, to be honest with you. And he's making his return against Brad Tavares, the Hawaiian. And Tavares, well, he's got some good names on his resume, as does Weidman, but I think this is 2 guys that are really past their best. And in terms of their stand-up game, I'm not sure who to favor exactly. It's going to be also tough to see how Weidman comes back from that injury, and if he's going to be more hesitant with some of his movements. He says he isn't, but we'll just have to wait and see. So this one, to start things off, is honestly a really tough one to predict. I am leaning towards Weidman a bit just because I think he is the overall better fighter, and I think could cause Tavares a lot of problems on the feet and even on the ground. But it's hard to say how Weidman's going to come back from this injury. Like, this is a brutal injury, and the way it ended for him in the octagon as well, like, he may have some nerves and things he needs to shake off before he can really get into the fight, but I'm going to tip him to do it either way. I think he'll just slightly edge out Brad Tavares. I think this one is going to go all 15 minutes, and it should be a good fight. So yeah, first fight of the card, I'm going to go with Chris Weidman to win by decision. So getting into another fun matchup on the card, we have Chito Vera taking on Pedro Munoz, and this was initially supposed to be Henry Cejudo versus Chito Vera, which would have also been an awesome fight, but Cejudo pulled out due to injury. So we got Vera versus Pedro, and this could be a real fun matchup. So we know that Chito didn't look the greatest in his last fight against Corey Sandhagen, and just honestly never really found himself in the fight. And Pedro Munoz, on the other hand, in his last fight was against Chris Gutierrez, where he honestly just outstruck him and outclassed him on the feet, which won him the decision. So this matchup, when I look at it, is honestly really close. Now, if you asked me this a year ago on who would win this fight, I would have said Chito without a doubt. But things have changed since then, and honestly, I'm a big believer in you're only as good as your last fight. And Chito's last fight, he didn't look too good, and Pedro did. In terms of how these two match up against each other on the feet, I think it's going to be a tough night for Pedro either way, though. Just because Chito really knows how to fight smaller guys than him, and Pedro is significantly smaller. So he understands the reach and understands how to slowly piece these guys up. We saw what happened against Frankie Edgar. And I think it's just a ticking time bomb waiting to go off in terms of Chito's knockout, to be honest. But this fight specifically, I think he will piece up Pedro on the feet. I think Pedro may try and bring things to the ground just because he saw how little Chito did there last time. But Chito still does have an underrated ground game that's actually pretty good. So he may be more lenient to keep it on the feet either way. But yeah, I think it's going to be Chito who gets the job done, and it's going to be a majorly striking matchup. I think this one also goes all 15 minutes. I don't see a finish here. Pedro's a tough guy to put out unless he gets eye poked. So yeah, I'm going to just stick with Chito Vera to win this. I think he'll bounce back here, and he knows he needs to bounce back in a big way. So I think he will put on a very good performance and ultimately get the job done. Moving up the card now, we have undefeated Ian Garry taking on Neil Magny. This fight was also changed, and the initial opponent for Garry was Jeff Neal, but Neal pulled out due to injury. That fight would have been really awesome. I think it would have just been a 15-minute kickboxing match, and I think that would have just been amazing. Kind of pissed that that fight's not happening anymore, but we get a suitable replacement in Neil Magny. I think that this fight, to be honest with you though, isn't going to be very close. I think Magny can definitely offer Gary some problems on the mat, but on the feet, they're just different worlds. They're so far apart, it's not even close. I think Gary will piece him up. We saw what he did to D-Rod, who I think's a better striker than Magny, and it just didn't end well for him. I think Gary's going to go in there. He's going to put on a show for the Boston crowd, and he's going to get a finish. I could see a second-round finish, maybe even third, but yeah, I think he's just going to piece up Magny. I think this fight just doesn't really make sense. I know why they had to do it, but I think that Gary is just ultimately going to be too much for Magny. I think the pressure, the striking, the speed, the combinations, it's just all too much for Magny at this point. So yeah, Ian Gary via KO or TKO is going to be my pick. So moving on to the co-main event now, we have a title fight on our hands, and it's going to be Weili Zhang defending her strawweight title against Amanda Lemos. And this one could be a real fun matchup. So Zhang Weili is coming off an impressive victory against Carla Esparza at UFC 281 in Madison Square Garden. And she honestly looked good everywhere. She was dominant on the feet and on the ground, and it ultimately led to her getting a submission victory. So I'm excited for Weili going into this matchup. I think she could do really well. Amanda Lemos, on the other hand, is no slouch herself. She submitted Michelle Waterson-Gomez and then KO'd Marina Rodriguez. And those are impressive names to have on your resume heading into a title fight. I mean, and not to mention both of them were finishes in different ways. This fight is just shaping up to be pretty interesting and also very tough to predict. One thing I know for sure, though, is this fight's not going 25 minutes. Both of these ladies are way too dangerous for the fight to last that long. Someone's going to get the finish somewhere, and I honestly don't know where. Like, to be honest, I think this is the hardest fight to predict on this card. If I were to go with somebody, though, I'm probably going to still lean to Weili just because she's so good. She's already beaten super high-level opponents and knows how to do it. And Lemos is still new to the championship game, so it may take her some time to get adjusted to someone like Weili, who's quick, powerful, and really knows how to spice things up on the feet and is always going to keep her guessing. I think Weili's goal is going to be to stay on the feet in this one, and Lemos is going to try and bring it to the ground. That's just the way I see it going. I think both ladies know their strengths in this one, and they're going to do their best to fulfill it. But yeah, I'm going to end up taking Zhang Weili to get the finish here. A late finish, I would say maybe fourth, maybe even fifth round, but I could see her getting a finish here and retaining her title. Now on to the main event, the fight everybody's looking forward to. It's Sugar Sean O'Malley taking on Aljamain Sterling. And this fight could have a lot of surprises for us, I think. So I don't need to go through both of these guys' career. I think we all know it. We know Aljamain Sterling has the most title fight wins in bantamweight history, and honestly could be regarded as the bantamweight GOAT following his win against Cejudo. Aljamain Sterling's at the peak of his game right now. This is his best version of himself. This is his prime. And he says this is his last fight at bantamweight and he's moving up. So you know he's going to want to turn up and he's going to want to put in a performance. And he has a harder threat in front of him than a lot of people think in Sean O'Malley. A lot of people are writing off Sean going into this fight, saying he doesn't have the ground game to match Aljo and doesn't have the pace to do 25 minutes. But there's a lot of things on Sean's side in this one. So for starters, Sean's a great team in his corner. Guys who know jiu-jitsu and know what type of game plan Aljo's going to bring. It's going to be a very grappling-heavy exchange, and I think Sean can match him in some departments. Sure, Aljo was definitely going to get the best of the exchanges because he's just a tremendous grappler, but Sean, with his height and his length, could still cause Aljo problems down there. But we all know the key for Sean in this one is going to be keeping it on the feet. I mean, Sean's looking so fast and explosive and could really cause Aljo some problems. Aljamain Sterling likes to fight with his hands down a lot, and with quick punches from Sean and kicks, he could really abuse that quickly. And I think Aljo will realize that as the fight goes on, and he's going to be shooting a lot more. He's not going to want to feel Sean out on the feet. I guarantee you that. So we have a classic striker versus grappler matchup. And who do I think is going to win? Well, to be honest, I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I could be horribly wrong, and I might honestly be horribly wrong. Like, I don't 100% agree with this decision, but I'm going to go for it, and it may happen. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Sean O'Malley to win this fight. It might sound crazy right now, but I just have a weird feeling he's going to do it. I think he's going to catch Aljo in one of these exchanges on the feet and ultimately put his lights out. He's going to get a TKO finish and become the new bantamweight champion. I think the quick turnaround for Aljo will also hurt him. Aljamain Sterling cuts a lot of weight to get down to 135 pounds, and Sean doesn't. So that also may play a factor in this fight. Also, like I mentioned, Aljo wants to move up. Sean knows that, and if Aljo loses, I could still see him moving up. I think his body is telling him he can't make 135 anymore, so I don't think he has a choice either way. But yeah, I'm going to go with Sean. I think he has enough on the feet to really crack Aljo and really cause damage, and I think he can hold him off in the grappling exchanges. As long as he doesn't let Aljo lock his hands and just take him to the ground and let him have his back, I think he can really get the job done here. So yeah, that's going to be my final pick for this one. I'm going to go with Sean O'Malley to get the knockout and become the new bantamweight champ. So yeah, there you guys have it. Those are my picks for UFC 292. I'm going to pop up the fighters on the screen right now that I think are going to win. And I'm hoping for a great night. I'm hoping for some of my bets to hit, and I'm hoping for just a great night in general. I think we will have a good night still with this card. A lot of fun fights, a lot of action, and I honestly just can't wait. If you guys enjoyed this video though, please consider subscribing and liking to the channel, as it always helps me out a lot. And drop your picks in the comment section down below and let me know who you think is going to win this weekend. I'd love to hear. But yeah, thank you for watching once again, and take care.